Wow, hey, pura vida, mi gente. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you guys making the time to be here, especially those who are in the live chat on time. So, I don't plan to be here too long. I just want to go ahead and do this video because every year it comes out of nowhere, St. Patrick's Day, because I'm trying to do videos about every holiday, all the origins, stories of the holidays and everything. And I always miss St. Patrick's Day. I literally remembered yesterday. I was like, oh man. So I wanted to go ahead and do something to you, like historical, review, academic review, separate the myths from the history. What are the origins of the celebration of St. Patrick's Day, since we're on St. Patrick's Day today, you know? Um, and we're gonna do it very simple. We're gonna learn this together. We're gonna read something, and we're gonna show some of the sources, what exists, what doesn't. Shout out to anybody that's from Ireland or my Irish followers, or anybody down with the Irish history or ancestry in Ireland. Shout out to all of you. Appreciate you guys. Thank you for being followers. Thank you for tuning in. Okay. So St. Patrick's Day, myth or history. This is part 35 of history or myth. All right. Is this history or is this myth? Or is it a little bit of both? Okay, so that's what I'm gonna kind of like show today. Appreciate you guys again tuning in. Yeah, wow. Let's get started. Yeah. So let me just screen share right here. So this is again part 35 of History or Myth. Make sure to check out all the previous episodes. A lot of good drop, a lot of good interesting topics. A lot of these are controversial. That's why I would put them in the History or Myth section playlist. All right, make sure to check out all the drop. All right. Some may say, hey, why are you putting a swarthy man, a so-called black St. Patrick? Well, I just told the ChatGPT to make St. Patrick look like the oldest paintings in Europe, especially like the Russian icon paintings. These are real historical paintings. I just want to show that just in case, people are like trying to say that we're blackwashing or whatever. These are real historical paintings from Russia. All right. They have all the saints, including St. Patrick, as so-called black. All right. So I'm just going with the oldest paintings. Okay. Don't be mad at me. All right. Don't be mad at me. All right. All right. Shout out to everybody tuning in. Shout out to everybody tuning in, man. St. Patrick, man. All right. So ChatGPT, I was gonna do like a little narration video, cinematic, little short, just like a couple of the videos I've done recently, but I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to read and talk to you like a person, like we talk about, get some context, pause a little bit, breathe. So who are we talking about? We're talking about St. Patrick, right? That's the hijack with the later. Anyways, don't worry about it. It says, when we speak about St. Patrick today, we're really speaking about a single historical figure in a strict or uncomplicated sense. What we are engaging with is a layered tradition that developed over centuries, beginning with a 5th century Romano-British individual. A Romano-British individual, so it didn't begin with an Irishman. And gradually expanding through theological writing, ecclesiastical competition, medieval storytelling, and eventually global cultural reinvention. The figure known as St. Patrick exists at the center of this process. But the image most people recognize today is not derived directly from his lifetime, okay? That's important to know. Remember, this guy lived in the 5th century, 400 ADs, right? So there's no real, like, I wouldn't say there's like real paintings of him, but there is depictions, based on the Russian icons, the oldest paintings showing all these people as swarthy, right? So I just wanted to say that this is what he's talking about, some of the images here. This is the NC Register. Remember the historical Patrick, National Catholic Register, some statue of him. All right. This is a historical place in Ireland. named after him. We're going to talk about all this stuff, like this one, Croagh Patrick. The Croagh Patrick, Ireland's holy mountain. Ireland's holy mountain. Symbol of Ireland's enduring faith, national Catholic register, all right? People making pilgrimages, right? To Croagh Patrick. I'm going to talk about that a little bit, okay? So I just want to go ahead and show that. Now, if we begin with the earliest recoverable layer, we find something usual for this period. Sorry, unusual. Patrick is one of the very few early medieval figures whose own writings have survived. All right? Unusual, this is true. One of the only few primary sources from his time, from his people his and his age that actually survive, his own writings and are widely accepted as authentic. All right, these are the ones they kind of go off based on his own words, and we're going to show which one's historic, which ones are myth later on. It says these texts, the Confessio, all right, the Confessio, and the Epistola ad Milites Corotici form the foundation of any serious historical reconstruction. They are not biographies and they are not neutral records. They are personal, defensive, and theological nature. In the Confessio, Patrick presents himself as a sinner and unlearned, but this language reflects more than humility. It suggests he was responding to criticism, likely from other Christians who question his authority, his education, or his methods, right? So, real quick, this is an English translation, the Confessions of St. Patrick concerning his life and conduct. Again, this is translated from Old Latin sources. Old Latin sources, right? Hold up, let me just show you guys. And Patrick's Confessio, all right? Just some examples. Right here, look, these are different manuscripts in Latin. That's from the Book of Armagh, Dublin Trinity College. Okay, and that's the type of writing in Latin. So this is what they're translating, supposedly from the 5th century AD. Okay, you guys follow me so far? These are real, right? So in this, let me just show you. I'm gonna look for the word captive, right? And I'm gonna show you what they're about to reference. So they have an explanation of his confession, then they have the actual translation. So this would be chapter 1 of the actual confession. The Confessions of St. Patrick. This is found on page 3, I guess. It says, I, Patrick, a most unlearned sinner. That's what ChatGPT was just talking about. The least of all the faithful and the most contemptible amongst many have had for my father, Calphurnius, that's his dad's name, Calphurnius, a deacon, who was the son of Potitus, formerly a priest, from the town of Ben-Ivan Taberni, okay, near the village of Enon, where I was made captive. So basically, this is in England, guys. He's from Britain, but he's a Roman. He is a Romano. He's a Roman Briton. And he's telling you that he was taken as a slave. He was taken as a slave. I was then about 16 years of age, being ignorant of the true God. I was brought captive into Ireland. That's how he ended up in Ireland first, as a slave. Okay? With so many thousands of men, not just him, but it was an orchestrated raid, slave raid, according as we had deserved because we had withdrawn from God. So he's supposedly writing it like, hey, I got punished, so I wasn't following God, so I became a slave. This is his writing, guys. I just want to show you there's more of them. St. Patrick's, his writings in life, right? Like this one. And again, these are like from the confession, as you guys can see, the Confessio. And we're going to see that there is also the Lorica of St. Patrick, the sayings of St. Patrick, the letter, and all these are the ones that are the prime sources that he wrote. But later on, a lot of the medieval sources, right, that add legend. This is another one called the Tripartite Life of Patrick, with other documents relating to that saint, edited with translations and indices by Whitney Stokes, right? So again, this is some examples of the source material that I went through, right? That I went through with ChatGPT. Again, I was gonna do a simple video. I can look at it. You see, this is Latin and originally, and there's also English translation in this book after the Latin. So those are kind of the sources they're gonna mention again. So from these writings, we can reconstruct certain basic facts, right? Patrick was born in Roman Britain, not in Ireland. Okay, very important, not in Ireland. Sometime in the late 4th century, usually estimated around 385 to 390 AD. This is way back. He identifies his father as Calpurnius, almost like Calpurnius Piso, huh? That's literally Calpurnius Piso's name. That's this, I think Arius Piso's dad is named Calpurnius. Very interesting. That makes me think, guys. I'm not going to draw a conclusion or allege something yet, but hey. It says a deacon and minor official. And his grandfather as Potitus, or like Pontius, right? Like a deacon, a priest, or I mean a pope, Pontius, Potitus, a priest. This places him within a Christian family connected to structures of the late Roman world. He also mentions a place called Benavent Taburne as his home, though its exact location remains uncertain. At approximately 16 years of age, Patrick was captured. His own words are direct and striking, all right? I just read them to you. I was taken captive with many thousands, okay? That phrase is important because it indicates this was not an isolated event. It reflects a broader system of organized raiding that took place during the collapse of Roman authority in Britain, all right? So when Rome fell in Britain, all the subjects, all these Romans became slaves. Irish raiders, so-called Irish, who are these so-called Irish? Targeted coastal communities, capturing large numbers of people and transporting them across the Irish Sea. And yes, Osa Patali, yes, exactly. They were actually indentured, meaning they were slaves like the Hebrew system. And literally writes that. He literally says that in his writings. I read that, guys. Trust me. That's why I want you guys to know that all the sources are on the description of this video. I want you, if you want to follow up on it, go ahead and follow up. Read all the in-between storyline. You guys will see that they are saying that these slaves were treated like Hebrew slaves, meaning worked for 6 to 7 years or whatever. And, you know, he was a shepherd. We're going to see that. He was a shepherd, so he had to work for somebody, right? So this was an important event. It's not isolated. There was a broader system of Romans being enslaved. The Irish raiders targeted coastal communities, capturing large numbers of people and transporting them across the Irish Sea. So right away, you know, did they ever teach you that St. Patrick was a slave? Did they ever tell you that story, right? This is what I'm saying. A lot of context missing, right? So continuing, Patrick was taken to Ireland and enslaved, most likely in rural setting. He describes working as a shepherd, living in isolation, exposed to harsh weather, and separated from his previous life. He writes that during this time he prayed constantly, even in snow and frost. This period is often described as spiritual awakening. So while he's writing, I'm reading it. He is literally writing that. I can go back to it. He's saying that, you know, because he withdrew from God, he was enslaved. He did not keep his commandments and were disobedient to our priests who advised us for salvation. The Lord therefore poured out upon us the wrath of his indignation and scattered us amongst the Gentiles, amongst the Gentiles, huh? Like Israelites? So are these really Romanos or just Romanized people? Who are the Britons, right? Coming from Brutus, coming from Troy. Trojans, coming from Darda. That's the line of Judah. So you guys understand? But are these real Gentiles or also other Israelites that have fallen off as well? They're being called pagans or so-called Druids now. A lot of context to understand. But I just want you guys to see that that's what they're saying. He's literally like saying it's all my fault. It's like a religious experience, a spiritual awakening that's happening to him while he was enslaved. But it can also be understood as a response to extreme isolation. His later interpretation of this experience is shaped by his religious framework, but the underlying reality is one of survival under difficult conditions. So after approximately 6 years, Patrick describes a turning point. He claims to have experienced a vision in which he was told, "Your ship is ready." He literally wrote all this stuff. I read all this stuff already, right? In the different sources. And the different sources I read, from yesterday to today. That's what I've been doing all day and yesterday, right? He says, "Your ship is ready." He said he saw a vision. Whether this is interpreted as literal vision, a dream, or retrospective explanation is uncertain. But what follows is more concrete. Basically, he escapes, right? He's a runaway. He runs away. He runs away. He's a runaway. He was a slave and he ran away. He escapes. He travels a considerable distance, around 200 miles, by his own account, guys. Listen, he's on the run through unfamiliar territory, without resources, and under the constant risk of being captured again. Okay? Visualize a rugged landscape, long traveler walking, okay? That's what you got to visualize. When he reaches a port, he encounters sailors who initially refuse to take him with them. Again, this is all written in his narrative, right? I read all this. It shows that Patrick was not immediately accepted or aided. He was a runaway slave, okay? And his status made him undesirable. He's an undesirable. Eventually, however, he is allowed to board the ship. After leaving Ireland, he describes a journey through what he calls a deserted country, lasting 28 days. Scholars have debated the location of this episode, right? Suggestion, either post Roman Britain or parts of Gaul that may have been destabilized at the time. During this journey, the group runs out of food. Patrick recounts that after he prays, a herd of pigs appear. This episode can be read in multiple ways: as a miracle, as a symbolic narrative of divine provisions, or as a story shaped by familiar religious motives. So shortly after this, Patrick mentions something that is rarely emphasized, okay? So after he gained his freedom, he actually goes back to his parents. They take him in. Actually, this is before he goes back to his parents. While he already had gained his freedom, he's trying to get back home. He was actually captured again. This is rarely emphasized, meaning they don't tell this part of the story. He was enslaved again. He was captured while he was a runaway. He does not provide extensive detail, but indicates that this second captivity lasted about 60 days. This brief statement complicates the narrative significantly. It shows that his life was not a simple progression from suffering to resolution, but rather a series of unstable and dangerous experiences, okay? We're talking about the real historical St. Patrick here, right? It says eventually he returns to his family in Britain. At this point, so he escapes again, basically is what they're leaving out. He actually runs away again. There's a whole story how he was managed to run away again. Again, I recommend reading the sources. I got them listed in the description of the video. Again, there's a lot of English translations. Even in the Latin ones, there's English right after, okay? And even in these ones, there's text ones translated for you at this website, confessio.ie, okay? So eventually made it back to his family in Britain. At this point, remember, he's from Britain. He's not even Irish. If you just join us, guys, try to watch from the beginning just in case you're lost with what's going on. So it says at this point, one might expect the story to conclude. Instead, it shifts direction. Patrick describes a vision in which he hears the voice of the Irish, all right? So he's telling his whole story like it's a mythical. He's having visions, God is leading him back to Ireland. He's hearing the voice of the Irish calling him back. This moment becomes central to his identity as missionary. It can be interpreted as a genuine religious experience, if it's a psychological reinterpretation, or a narrative constructed to justify his later actions. So it could be all three, or one of the three. When Patrick returns, right, to Ireland, likely in the mid-5th century, he does not enter a religious vacuum, okay? Christianity was already present there. He wasn't the one who brought Christianity. It was somebody there before him. There's a key figure here and he's called Palladius, right? Or Palladius, right? He is recorded by Prosper of Aquitaine, that's another source again, as being sent to Irish Christians. This means that Patrick was part of an existing movement, not its sole originator. Okay, so real quick, this is some statues of the Palladius. As you guys can see, Swarty, they try to lighten it up. This is what I was talking about. I literally found the original. It's a lot darker. You can see how they're trying to light it. It's brown. See that copper red, brownish red? Yeah. And then, so Palladius or Palladius was a 5th century Christian bishop known as the first bishop sent from Rome to Ireland, AD 431, commissioned by Celestine I. He is regarded as, I can't get that out the way, the first documented Christian missionary to the Irish before St. Patrick's better known mission, all right, before St. Patrick. So St. Patrick wasn't the first, all right? Key facts, birthplace likely Gaul or Britain, so he's not even Irish either. The mission to Ireland sent by Pope Celestine I, title first bishop of the Irish believing in Christ, right? That's Palladius, not St. Patrick. He died in 432 AD, supposedly legacy, precursor to St. Patrick's mission. So little is certain about Palladius' origins, though some traditions describe him as a deacon active in the Church of Rome or Gaul, okay? So his mission to Ireland, Palladius' mission appears to have been brief. Early sources such as Prosper of Aquitaine's Chronicle, that's a primary source for medieval times, guys, or even older than that, record that he was sent to the Irish believing in Christ, implying pre-existing Christian communities. So even before him, there was already so-called Christian community of people who might have been influenced by what Christianity was teaching or the stories of Jesus. Later Irish annals and hagiography suggest he landed in Leinster and faced opposition from local rulers, after which he may have departed for Scotland. Some accounts link Palladius' later activity to Scotland, okay? So it goes on and on as the whole story of Palladius. Just wanted to go ahead and show that. So St. Patrick was not the first, basically, okay? Hope you guys are enjoying so far. It says the Ireland he enters is politically fragmented, all right? They're talking about St. Patrick now. Composed of multiple kingdoms. This is when he came back, right? Kingdoms with their own rulers and traditions. There is no centralized authority. This context is important because it means that any missionary activity would have required negotiation with local elites rather than a single unified conversion event. Now, one of the most important shifts in this entire story occurs not during Patrick's lifetime, but about 2 centuries later. The famous stories associated with Patrick, his confrontations with Druids, okay? Confrontations with Druids, his miracles before kings. So all this story right here, we're about to get into the myth, that did not occur during Patrick's lifetime, but about 2 centuries later. These are stories came out later, right? His confrontations with Druids, miracles before kings, his dramatic acts of defiance. You're going to read about all this legend about him, right? They do not appear in his own writings. He never said any of that. He never said any of that, right? They emerge in the 7th century texts such as the Vita Sancti Patricii, all right? This is what they're talking about, okay? 7th century, Latin, written in Latin. You guys see that? St. Patrick right there, man. Yellow. He looked like olive right there. Oh, hey. They're lining him up. St. Patrick, his writings in life. This is the one I showed you earlier, one of the sources that I have ready. Okay. That's what that document from the 7th century, that's where they're getting a lot of the legend from. Again, 200 years later, it says the Vita Sancti Patricii, the life of St. Patrick, the Vita, life of St. Patrick. It's a 7th century Latin hagiography of St. Patrick, written by the Irish monk Moorish Montserrat. And again, I got all that drop here. I got a lot of that drop here. All right, in these books, they're all in here. They're all translated in these different books. Key facts: the author Mircea Mocu Macteni, late 7th century Latin, commissioned by Bishop Enslaved. Primary manuscript book of Armagh. That's where it's coming out of. Early 9th century. So the legends, again, those legends are coming 200 years later. 200 years later. and also from the Collectanea. The Collectanea, right? Just to guys show you the Collectanea, another source, also written in Latin. Collectanea Latina by Thomas Quinn. There's an older copy of it right here. Okay. The Collectanea is a 7th century Latin compilation attributed to Tirachan, one of the earliest biographers of St. Patrick. In the book of Armagh, okay, it says, key facts, 7th century attributed to Tirachan, bishop and disciple of Ultan of Artbrakan. Manuscript source, book of Armagh. Life and travel missionary acts of St. Patrick. So again, these are people later on, 200 years later, after St. Patrick lived, writing about all these mythical things. How true are they? So it says Tirachan's Collectanea appears to compile earlier oral and written traditions from his mentor Ultan, who is believed to have had access to accounts close to Patrick's lifetime. Believed, but nobody has found those sources yet. The text adopts a factual, initiatory-like structure, listing places, visited conversions, and foundations of churches. Its style suggests the purpose of preserving ecclesiastical memory rather than creating a full narrative biography. Okay? But even though both the Vita Sancti Patricii and the Collectanea provides critical evidence, right, for the geography of early Irish Christianity, the organization of church communities, and the spread of the patrician cult, okay? Patrician cult. The only surviving copy is contained within the book of Armagh, all right, which we're showing you translations of, okay? So I just wanted to go ahead and talk about those two, just, emphasize that a lot of the myths, legends, coming out from medieval times, not from his lifetime, not from his own writings, okay? Okay, let me see where it was. So the works were written in a very different context, okay? By this time, the Irish church was more established, and there was a need to assert authority, define origins, and establish legitimacy. In the Vita Sancti Patricii, Patrick is depicted confronting Druids at royal sites such as the Hill of Tara. Remember the history of the Hill of Tara? Tara, right, with the Judah, the daughters, the Ezekiel, right? Zedekiah, the daughters of Zedekiah. Remember that whole drop, guys. The Hill of Tara, Tara, performing miracles and symbolically overcoming pagan authority, So what are they calling pagan if we're talking about Israelite mounds? The Hill of Tara is a mound, guys. Is a mound. You see what I'm saying? We gotta have context. It's almost like the Catholics fighting the cryptos, the Catholics fighting the Indians, There's, you gotta have context between both peoples here, both sides. So it's funny, you guys are gonna see that a lot of his legends are associated to very ancient sites already. It's almost like they're just retelling the story and attributing it now to St. Patrick. That's what the church is doing, is what their ChatGPT is trying to say, based on the research we talked about today, me and ChatGPT, and yesterday, right? This is 2 days of research. We got a whole long conversation, guys. I can scroll up for hours, right? So supposedly he did some miracles in the Hill of Tara and symbolically overcoming pagan authority. In the Collectanea attributed to Tirachan, we find detailed churches he supposedly founded, including Armagh, Saul, and Down Patrick. So the Hill of Tara, right? The Hill of Tara, which is an ancient ceremonial and royal site in County Meath, Ireland. It served as a traditional seat of high kings, and it remains an archaeological, right? Very important. I hate that it has this follow-up thing on it. Archaeological landscape symbolizing early Irish kinship and spiritual power. When we're talking about the early Irish kings, we're talking about Judah. Remember, guys, the daughters of Zedekiah hooking up with the descendants of Sarah and Danites. You guys remember that? So the Hill of Tara, right? Look this is a mound, just like in the States. That's what I'm saying, guys. So this is the Hill of Tara right here. This is Mound of the Hostages, right? Mound of the Hostages. Who builds mounds? Right? This is the Lie of Feld. Oh, the Lie of Feld. The Stone of Destiny. What? The lie of fail, mystery, screeching stone of Tara, brought by the Tuat de Danann, brought by the Danites, brought by the Danites. You see how interesting this gets? Lie of fail, mythical Ireland, huh? Mythical Ireland. How much myth is it? And how much retelling of a original story is it? You know, like what are they turning into Christian St. Patrick's stories? That's what I'm trying to show you here. So the vigil of the Hero of Tara. Okay, that's what we did. It says these texts are examples of hagiography. They are not intended to function as strict historical records. Instead, they communicate meaning, authority, and identity. When Patrick is shown defeating Druids, this should not necessarily be read as literal historical event, but he probably did, right? Meaning him and Catholic soldiers, not just him. It is better understood as a symbolic representation of the transition from older religious systems to Christianity. I live near Tara. That's what's up, P.H. Goldie. Says this symbolic framework becomes especially important when we consider the story of that Patrick drove snakes out of Ireland, all right? Very important. The whole story that he drove out snakes, right? And, you know, a lot of us, you know, we're hip, you know, we say, hey, it most likely means people, right? It most likely means the Amaru, the snake people, huh? Yeah, that's what I was trying to talk to ChatGPT about, like, because he brought up that he was fighting Druids. So I was like, hey, I know the snake thing could be a legend, but it could also be symbolic or metaphor of something else. It could be people, right? So ChatGPT kind of agreed. Because from a biological perspective, when he's talking about driving out snakes, this cannot be literal, as Ireland had no native snakes since the end of the Ice Age. The story must be therefore interpreted symbolically. One of the strongest interpretations, and one that aligns with the broader narrative tradition, is that the snakes represent an existing belief systems, right? Or people practicing those belief systems, right? Possibly associated with Druids. So who's the Druids? Or other pre-Christian traditions. In this sense, the act of driving out snakes becomes a metaphor for cultural and religious transformation of a people. I want to add, right? As the centuries progress, the narrative continues to expand. Texts such as the Tripartite life of St. Patrick, right, which is right here, I just showed you earlier. Like this is the literal, exact facsimile copy of this source, the Tripartite life of Patrick, right? These are real sources, guys. We can read them, but they're long. You know, there's so much details in them. That source introduced even more elaborate accounts of Patrick's journeys, right? And again, this is much later on. This is not during his lifetime. He didn't say none of this. So now they got him in crazy journeys, miracles, and interactions. These works further develop the image of Patrick as a dominant religious figure, reinforcing the authority of institutions associated with him, meaning the Catholic Empire institutions. One of the most important of these institutions is centered on Armagh. Armagh becomes closely associated with Patrick and is promoted as his primary ecclesiastical center. This association is not simply devotional, it is political. Control over Armagh meant influence within the Irish church, okay? And linking it to Patrick provided a powerful claim to legitimacy. The attribution of churches and sites to Patrick in texts like the Collectanea can therefore be understood as part of a broader effort to establish ecclesiastical authority. All right? A highlight thing of Armagh. Oh, let me see. Did they give us a thing of Armagh? No, they didn't. But this is the source that I was just showing you, right? Look at these. Again, just some images. So one of the most, okay, we got that, sorry. So traditions concerning Patrick's death also develop over time. So again, now his legends about how he died, right? How he died, right? Yes, the snakes associated to Nagas, that's what I'm saying. That's why I said, who is the Druids? So-called Druids, right? That's what I'm trying to explain to you guys. As much as ChatGPT does not want to say people, it literally is trying to tell you. Who are the so-called Druids? Who are these so-called pagans, right? They would call the Nagas pagans, right? They did call Indians pagans, didn't they? Who are the ancient Picts? Who are all these ancient people? Celts, Druids. Remember the research we have, guys. So traditions concerning Patrick's death also develop over time. That comes later. He is commonly associated with Down Patrick, where he is said to be buried. Ah, he is said to be buried in Down Patrick. So this is the place right here. Let me just look at some of the images. Right, Down Patrick, that a church, that's an old world building, probably from his time, just like in the Americas. So he's probably, supposedly he's buried here, right? This is the visitor center. This is pretty cool how ChatGPT is like, you guys, it took me all day to finally get ChatGPT to be aligned with how I wanted to present this. It is, look at how it, yeah, it works pretty well when you kind of have to, argue with it a little bit. But that's where he's supposed to be buried. Down Patrick's historic market town in County Down, Northern Ireland, renowned as the traditional burial place of St. Patrick, okay? Population 11,000, right? County Down, Northern Ireland. Again, shout out to all the Irish followers, man, out there. Hope you guys enjoying the history. I hope I'm doing a good job. I'm not trying to be, change any history. I'm just trying to show context of what people don't know or understand about this holiday, right? So he is said to be buried there. According to later tradition, he is buried alongside Saint Bridget and Saint Columba. These associations are not supported by contemporary 5th century evidence. So that's, again, a later legend. Nobody really knows if they're actually buried there. But they reflect the development of sacred landscape in which important religious figures are symbolically linked. Relic traditions also emerge, right? As with many saints, physical remains or objects associated with Patrick become important for devotional and institutional purposes. A lot of symbology behind St. Patrick. It's not even his own. It's not even his own. It's more for the Christian evangelizing part of it, the institutional purposes. These relics serve to connect communities to the saint and to reinforce claims of continuity and legitimacy, right? Moving forward, oh, sorry, I didn't even, St. Bridget, I was supposed to click on St. Bridget. We got to make this visual, right? So St. Bridget, right? These are things associated to St. Bridget in Ireland. Look at the towers, just like the ones they find in the Americas. I'm trying to tell you guys, Zach's saying these old towers in the middle of the forest. Check it out. It says, word prayer gives St. Bridget's cross. St. Bridget's cross, huh? That symbol. You guys, like the swastika. You see the swastika. You see like the symbols in the ancient America and all over the world. They say it's St. Bridget's cross now. But you guys see, isn't that interesting? Look at that. Look at that. Oh yeah. And then we got St. Columba. Some images on St. Columba, huh? That's the hijack with the whitewashed versions. What's going on here? Okay. So this is associated to St. Columba. Yeah, he was a Roman enforcer. Yeah, he was Roman. Exactly. That's what we talked about in the beginning. His youth, who his people are, who his dad's name are, who are they? They were Roman Britanno citizens. They were over there. All right. So moving forward into the early modern period, right now, during our times, right? This is a whole other part of it. So we got a little bit of his history, the real one and the mythical one. The real one basically is what he wrote in the Confessio and all the other ones in Latin. He didn't say nothing about no mythical or legendary things or miracles, nothing like that, guys. All that came back out in the medieval times and other writings, because they were trying to make his story more mythical so it can be more believed, more miraculous, more Christian, more Catholic, right? So he could be made a saint. Now we're going to talk about something real deep about St. Patrick's Day itself, the celebration. I'm going to show you guys. Ready? Are you guys ready? Basically, St. Patrick's Day celebrations began in the Americas. It began in the Americas, okay? It didn't get officially recognized in Ireland until 1903. Before that, it was just feast. Families just had small gatherings and feast. It wasn't like a St. Patrick's Day parade or celebration like we do in the States. So we're going to begin in very colonial times back in the 1600s, all right? So moving forward, right? Oh, sorry, guys. Into the early modern period, we see another transformation. The commemoration of Patrick begins to appear in new contexts, including the Spanish colonial world. In the early 17th century, records indicate celebrations of San Patricio in places such as St. Augustine. Okay, St. Augustine, Florida, one of the first settlements in the Americas by the Spanish, right? Or so-called French, meaning Huguenots, of the Huguenots, right? St. Augustine with an old world architecture. Look at this star fort. Old world, man. Reset. Old world bridge and all that. Look at this, man. St. Augustine, huh? So St. Augustine, we're talking about the 1600s, guys. All right, 17th century, the first celebration of St. Patrick as a celebration, as a parade, right? It says these references identified in Spanish colonial archives and studied by historians such as J. Michael Francis, all right? Again, all the sources, the name of the sources as well are in the description of this video, suggests that the observance of Patrick's Day had already spread beyond Ireland at an early date, okay? And it gets very detailed. When you start reading J. Michael Francis' description and the Spanish sources, it tells you that they literally started celebrating, getting married, doing the parade, all that, for the very first time. And that happened in the United States. Or North America, right? So we move along, maybe 200 years later, 100 years later, sorry, 100 years later, says the modern form of St. Patrick's Day, however, developed most clearly in the context of the Irish diaspora from the Irish slaves. The Irish slaves that came to the Americas. A lot of these were Black Irish, guys. This is what I'm trying to make you understand, man. Just like Swarthy St. Patrick, man. A lot of these are your so-called Black Irish, a lot of your so-called Irish slaves. The tradition, however, developed most clearly in the context of the Irish diaspora in the 18th century, right? In the 1700s, in Boston, huh? That's where you get your Celtics, right? Your Celtics, the basketball team, the Fighting Irish, huh? In Boston, a celebration is recorded in 1737. In New York City, the first parade takes place in 1762. These events occur within communities that are navigating issues of identity. Why? They're being oppressed, guys. They're being discriminated. These Irish are being discriminated. They're being oppressed. You guys understand? There's a deep meaning behind that. There's a lot of context people don't understand. A lot of these are Black Irish. Belonging, right? They're having troubles belonging. Issues of identity and marginalization. These Irish immigrants often face discrimination. Guys, listen. Be smart. Discern what they're telling us here. Again, we saw a lot of the description of the runaway ads and a lot of these people's descriptions as literally Black folks, Negro people, right? Woolly hair, stringy hair, frizzy hair, right? Swarthy, dark complexion, very swarthy. They're being discriminated, marginalized. They have issues of identity now in the Americas, right? These Irish. And public celebrations of St. Patrick's Day became a way of asserting presence and unity. It was how they dealt with their oppression, these so-called Irish. You understand? Early parade illustrations. So picture 1700 Black Irish parading in the streets of Boston and New York, guys. This is a critical point. The large-scale public celebratory form of St. Patrick's Day that is widely recognized, right? Widely recognized. So from Boston originally to New York City, right? St. Augustine. So this public celebratory form of St. Patrick's Day that is widely recognized today was not originally developed in Ireland, okay? It was not developed in Ireland. It was shaped in diaspora communities, particularly in North America. These communities transformed the day into public expression of identity, incorporating parades, symbols and shared rituals, okay? Okay, I just want to add something to this since we're live. Biggest famous St. Patrick Day, right? Celebration is actually in Montserrat, guys, right? In Montserrat Island in the Caribbean. Those are Black Irish and Indians over there. Montserrat. All right, remember we did a video on this, guys. We did a video on this. People literally go from all over the world to celebrate St. Patrick's Day in the island of Montserrat. In the island of Montserrat. Why would all these descendants, if they are descendants of Africans, why would they be celebrating St. Patrick's Day so big? St. Patrick's Day so big. You guys understand what I'm showing you? Remember the video of the Black Irish I did recently? You guys understand? The biggest celebration of St. Patrick's Day festival is in Montserrat. Even the Irish go there. Even tourists all over the world go there to celebrate. Most likely that's happening today. I don't know if that's the occasion. Most likely that's going on right now. They partying it up right now in Montserrat in the middle of summer, man. Like it's summer. Look how they dress. Like the Seminole people, right? But with the Irish colors. Because they are Indians, American Indians, and Black Irish, a lot of them, and Black French and other things, right? I'm trying to tell you guys, look, how did one Caribbean island came to celebrate St. Patrick's Day? Don't tell me about no slaves and African. We already debunked that. We literally debunked that. Do you guys understand? Do you guys understand? I'm about to show you guys something I just got today. I'm about to show you something I just got today, right? Hold on, let me see if I can, so share. Shout out to the person that sent this to me. All right, we're not just making stuff up. This is in my Telegram group. Okay, this is literally a message I received today on Instagram, right? Somebody who follows me, it says, these are my 4th and 5th grade grandparents from Ireland. Your point proven in my family. All right, and these are Black folks, guys. It says Sampson County, North Carolina is named after him. That's where that landed. That's where they landed. You the mother effing man, G. Right? And then we got the actual images of the people. Right? Let me just see if we could show this. All right, do you guys see that? That's Sampson. That's who Sampson County in North Carolina is named after, guys. They have Black Irish ancestry. They might have some Indian ancestry as well. But he's saying they are straight up Black Irish. That's his family. He literally verified it in his genealogy, right? And let's go to the other one, right? This is Junior, John Sampson Jr., as you guys can see. It says Sampson County family photos for identification, right? That's what we're talking about. We ain't making this up, guys. We ain't making this up. He's literally telling me that's part of his family, okay? So, I mean, you already know from my Black Irish videos what we're talking about. But let's go back to what I was showing you guys again. Montserrat has the biggest Black Irish. Black Irish are real, man. It's a real thing. Look, guys, we're not making this up. It's a real thing. And the women, look how they dress. Mixing the indigenous custom with the Irish colors. You guys understand what I'm trying to show you? Get out of that bubble. Like you guys are many things, you know. Individual investigation is needed on all your families apart. Don't try to generalize like you're like everybody. You might have a whole different genealogy than other Black folks. You know, they might be more Scottish than Irish. They might be more German, and they might be more Indian or Choctaw. They might be more Algonquin. They might be, you know, more Taino. They, you know, whatever. I'm just saying. So I think you guys got my point now, right? So it was shaped in the diaspora communities, particularly North America. These communities transformed the day into a public expression of identity, incorporating parades, symbols, and shared rituals. Now, only later, right, does this version of the holiday become prominent in Ireland itself. In cities such as Dublin, large-scale festivals emerged much later, particularly in the 20th century, literally in 1903, guys. In 1903 is when they start celebrating St. Patrick's Day in Ireland. 1903, guys, officially. often influenced by tourists, often influenced by the tourism because they're saying, hey, let's do it like they're doing it in America. Let's do it like they're doing it in the Caribbean. And by the visibility of celebrations abroad, they celebrating it harder abroad, man. In this sense, the modern holiday can be understood as having been developed externally and then reintroduced. Now, when we consider all of these layers together, what emerges is not a single story, but a process. Patrick begins as a historical individual whose own writings provide a limited but valuable perspective on his life. Over time, that figure is expanded through medieval texts into a symbol of religious authority and cultural transformation. In the modern period, he becomes focal point for identity, particularly within diasporic communities, and eventually a global cultural figure. Okay? To study St. Patrick is therefore to study how history is constructed. Pay attention. It requires attention to primary sources, awareness of later additions, and understanding of the context in which those additions were made. Like why they were making up this stuff. And it was to create this whole mythical history so they can emphasize the more religious aspect of Christianity of it. And also, they grab in pagan traditions and stories, even pagan deities, so-called supposed pagan deities, and change their name to St. Patrick, guys. Because a lot of these places where he gets mentioned or associated to already had deities, principal deities that was being recognized there or worshipped or named after, right? So again, we're talking about reconstructed history when we really study St. Patrick. You got to study the primary sources. You got to know what came later. It also requires recognizing that what people celebrate today is not simply a historical figure, but a tradition that has been shaped and reshaped across centuries, all right? Started with the Black Irish, Diasporas, man. And perhaps the most important question to carry forward is this. When we hear the story of St. Patrick, are we hearing the voice of a 5th century individual or the many voices that have spoken for him since? You guys understand? It gets deep. It gets deep. Again, I just want to show you guys. One second. This is before I go check out the whole playlist, but I want you guys, if you're really interested, if you think I did it too quick, if you think I didn't, talk about everything, if you want all the details of what they're saying, how he fought the Druids, if you want to put your own things together, if you want the names of the characters involved, just before I go check out the, all right, just go to the description of my video, this one right here that we're live on, you're going to see a full source list, okay? And you got all the sources, historical, you can do dissertations, documentaries, you can copy all this, you can read it yourself, you can get into the whole narrative and the whole story to have all the context, all right? I just wanted to make sure, because it was St. Patrick's Day, that I don't miss out this year on doing something about St. Patrick. And I promise that I am going to try to get into a lot of these stories and how they may be from older Celtic stories, how they might have changed people's names and added St. Patrick, and what's up with these mounds and locations they're given to St. Patrick and all the context on it, right? So I'm definitely going to do that now that we have an introductory video, an introductory breakdown, 101 breakdown of St. Patrick's Day and the celebration that we know today, the holiday. Okay, what's myth and what's history? Just like this playlist is called History or Myth, you guys decide, between all the things that we read today. And here again, as all the sources that you can go through, you see that only the ones where he talks about himself are the primary sources. All the rest is later interpretations, based on supposed primary sources that they haven't found yet, that he never wrote or other people from his time never wrote, okay? But I hope you enjoyed. the little breakdown today in St. Patrick's Day. I'll give you your St. Patrick's Day celebration time back. I know a lot of you probably don't celebrate it, but hey, if you are, hey, I'll give you your day back. Shout out to everybody in Montserrat partying it down right now. The biggest St. Patrick's Day celebration in the world on Montserrat Island, all right? Which is fitting because a lot of Black Irish descendants ended up there, all right? Again, hope you guys enjoyed the little breakdown. Hope it wasn't too fast, but go ahead and take advantage of the sources. You can look for them yourself, all right? If you want to follow up on them, you got a whole list there, all right? Sometimes you guys ask me, hey, can you do a list of the sources? Well, there you go. Full source list, full breakdown. I just wanted to make commentary on it real quick. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I appreciate you, especially everybody in the live chat, all right? Especially everybody in the live chat. Again, the sources are in the description of the video, guys. The sources are in the description of the video, right? Montserrat, turn up. Yeah, they're celebrating hard today, Montserrat. Don't get too drunk over there now. You know, I know how you know, these Irish are, man. They're like Costa Ricans, man. They get effed up. All right, guys. Appreciate your time. Thank you for coming through. Much love and respect. Pura vida, mi gente. Wow.